Hey everyone, Emily here, and welcome to my kitchen. Ever since I did my last video for that viral cottage cheese flatbread, all I've been seeing in my feed on TikTok and Instagram are more cottage cheese recipes, and this one actually came from one of my friends, and I'm really curious to try it out. We're gonna see if we can turn cottage cheese into a super high protein ice cream. So let's see how it turns out. I am really curious to give this a try. This recipe is going to be a super quick and easy one to put together. The longest part is waiting for it to freeze. Now, the reason I'm hopeful that this is pretty good is because cream cheese frosting happens to be my favorite, and it kind of has that tart but sweet taste where it's not too sweet. And I'm hoping that this cottage cheese recipe kind of has the same vibe with this ice cream. So I'm going to start off by combining 3 cups of cottage cheese. I'm using the full fat version and small curd, and this happens to be about an entire 24-ounce container. So you don't need to measure it out. If you're using a 24-ounce container, that's going to give you 3 cups. I'm going to put this right into a blender. And then for a sweetener, we're going to use 1/3 cup of maple syrup. And you could probably use something else for the sweetener. Just pop that right into the blender. There's a few different recipes for this, and I'm using the one that I saw on the Jar of Lemons page. I'm going to go ahead and link that creator's recipe down in the description box below, but there's probably a few different ways you can make this. And then finally, I'm going to add in 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And it is optional to spill it all over the place. Once you have all your ingredients combined in the blender, you're just gonna pop the lid on and blend this until it's smooth. Now that this is a nice smooth consistency, I'm just going to pour it into a container to freeze. I'm going to use a loaf pan, but you could probably use whatever you want. So I'm gonna start off with about half of that mixture and then layer in some of my mix-ins. And I'm going to use crushed Oreos for a cookies and cream type of feel. So I'll take some of these Oreos, put them into a little Ziploc bag, and then I'll crush them up with the back of a glass. Now that my Oreos are all crushed up, I'm just going to sprinkle about half of these over the top of my first layer. And I'll go ahead and just gently mix this in. I didn't want to put them in the blender because I don't want it to be a puree. I want to have those chunks of Oreo. I'll add my remaining ice cream mixture over the top. And I'm a little curious to see what this tastes like all on its own. You can probably leave it plain if you want to. That's good. It tastes, like I was hoping, kind of like cream cheese frosting. So I think this is actually gonna be super good. I'll finish up by sprinkling my remaining Oreo cookies over the top. And I'll once again kind of give this just a little swirl into that top layer. And then just for looks, I am going to place a few of these uncrushed mini Oreos over the top. I think that's just going to make it look super cute. And this is ready for the freezer. I'm going to cover it up with some plastic wrap and pop it in the freezer for at least 3 hours according to the recipe, or until it's solid. So I'm gonna leave it for the rest of today, check back in on it tomorrow, and see how this turned out. Stay tuned. It's the next day and this has just come out of the freezer and it's looking pretty good. I'm gonna give this a few minutes to kind of soften up, but I am really hopeful that this turned out fantastic. I tasted the mix for this before I popped it in the freezer. It had a really pleasant taste. If you're a fan of cream cheese frosting, had a very similar kind of taste to that, where it's not too sweet. It has a little bit of that kind of tartness to it, where you kind of have that bite from the cheese. So I'm looking forward to giving this a try. Can't wait. You definitely have to take this out of the freezer at least 15 minutes before you want to eat it. It took a long time to soften up. Otherwise, it has that really like icy kind of hard texture to it. I'm hoping now that it's had some time to kind of unfreeze just a little bit, it becomes a bit more creamy and easy to scoop. Let's see how it turned out. All right, this is scooping pretty well, but it still kind of has that icy texture. If you can see here, the edges have become nice and creamy where they thawed first, but this inside part, not the best ice cream texture. Let's see how the taste is. All right, I'm going to give this a try, and I don't know if you can hear it picking up on the microphone, but it does kind of have that icy texture still. It's starting to become a little bit more creamy as it melts, but it's kind of just melting, so it's kind of skipping that nice, soft, creamy ice cream stage and going right from pretty icy to kind of a little bit too melty to be considered ice cream. So I'm just gonna have to give it a try and see if the flavor makes up for it. Here we go. The flavor here is actually really good, and I don't mind the texture. This is actually really decent, and if you're a fan of cream cheese frosting, you're gonna really like this. It doesn't taste like cream cheese frosting, but it kind of has that same vibe, just that kind of not too sweet taste and a little bit of that kind of cheesy tang to it. And I actually really like this. Now, I don't have one of these, but I've been seeing them everywhere on TikTok, on Instagram. If you have a Ninja Creamy, I bet this would turn out really good with that. Overall, I'd say this is not too bad, probably a 7 out of 10. Definitely better than Halo Top. If you've ever tried Halo Top, this I think is much better in comparison, and pretty high protein when you factor in the cottage cheese. I'll do some calculations and put the nutritional facts off to the side here, but overall, solid ice cream substitute. I would say definitely workable, and I would make it again. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, don't forget to hit subscribe and the bell icon so you can get notified every time I post. As always, you can find the full recipe down in the description box below, along with links to all my social media pages so you can follow along for more cooking content throughout the week. If you're interested in watching more recipes that I found on the internet, go ahead and click the playlist off to the side. Hope to see you back here next time.